The city hadn't changed, but the way it looked at Seo Jun had. 6 months ago, he was a shadow in the corner of a room, a piece of furniture that Min Jae-won used to prop himself up. Now, when Jun walked into the Kang Syndicate's headquarters, the guards didn't just open the door, they straightened their ties. They didn't look at him with pity, they looked at him with a quiet, uneasy respect. Respect, Jun would soon learn, was heavier than fear. Welcome back to the BL Story Room. If you're just joining us, this is the continuation of He Broke Me in Public, I Agreed to a Mafia Arrangement. And if you were here for part 1, welcome home. Before we begin, I want to know, where are you listening from today? Drop your country or city in the comments. I see you and I read them all. If you love emotionally driven BL stories where power is quiet, love is chosen, and healing is earned, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new story. Now, let's begin. Chapter 1. The boardroom was freezing. It was a room designed to make people uncomfortable, to make them want to sign whatever paper was in front of them just so they could leave. Tae-hyun sat at the head of the table, his face a mask of bored stone. Beside him, Jun sat with a tablet and a small, unassuming notebook. To the room, he looked like a secretary. To Tae-hyun, he was the only reason this meeting hadn't turned into a bloodbath 20 minutes ago. The numbers don't add up, Mr. Rossi, Jun said. His voice was soft, but the room went silent the moment he spoke. The man across the table, a veteran of the shipping industry with hands like leather, scoffed. I've been doing this for 30 years, kid. The logistics are sound. Jun didn't blink. He didn't get angry. He simply tapped his stylus on the screen, projecting a spreadsheet onto the wall. You've accounted for the seasonal tides in the North Atlantic, but you've missed the 3-day delay at the customs bottleneck in Liverpool. If we follow your schedule, the perishable cargo sits for 72 hours in unshaded docks. We lose $4 million before the ships even hit the mid-Atlantic. The room was so quiet you could hear the hum of the light fixtures. Mr. Rossi looked at the screen, then at Jun, then at Tae-hyun. Tae-hyun didn't even look at the data. He just looked at Rossi. My fiancé has a very good memory, Tae-hyun said, his voice like velvet over a blade. He doesn't miss details. And he doesn't like losing money. Do you want to try again, or should we find someone who can read a calendar? Rossi began to sweat. I'll have the revised plan on your desk by morning. When the room cleared, leaving only the two of them, the heavy atmosphere evaporated. Tae-hyun let out a long breath and slumped back into his chair, rubbing his eyes. You're getting too good at that, Tae-hyun murmured. They're starting to be more afraid of your notebook than my enforcers. Jun closed his tablet with a satisfying click. It's easier to be respected when people realize you're the one holding the keys to their bank accounts. He walked over to Tae-hyun, standing behind his chair. He hesitated for a second, the old habit of asking for permission still lingered, before placing his hands on Tae-hyun's shoulders. Tae-hyun let his head fall back against Jun's stomach, a gesture of total vulnerability that he would never show another living soul. The syndicate is stable, Jun. For the first time in years, the streets are quiet. The other families are actually talking to us instead of shooting at us. Because of you, Jun whispered, his fingers kneading the tension out of Tae-hyun's muscles. Because of us, Tae-hyun corrected. He reached up, taking Jun's hand and bringing it to his lips. He kissed the knuckles, his eyes closing. But peace is a fragile thing. People get bored when there's no blood in the water. Jun felt a cold prickle at the back of his neck. He looked out the window at the New York skyline. From up here, the city looked like a jewel box. But he knew what lived in the cracks. Is that why you've been looking at the international shipping reports from the West Coast? Jun asked. Tae-hyun stiffened under his hands. Nothing gets past you, does it? You've been tapping your pen in that specific rhythm again, Jun said. The one you do when you're calculating risks. Tae-hyun sighed, pulling Jun around so he was standing in front of him. He kept hold of Jun's hands, his grip firm but gentle. There's a deal. A big one. It would move our operations into the legal sector permanently. Real estate, tech, infrastructure. But it requires a meeting in Los Angeles with the heads of the Western Triads. They're old school, Jun. They don't like new faces. And they certainly don't like peace. You're worried, Jun realized. I'm not worried about the deal, Taehyun said, his eyes darkening. I'm worried about the target on our backs. 6 months ago, you were a secret. Now, everyone knows you're my weakness. And in our world, people don't attack the lion. They go for the thing the lion loves. Jun looked at their joined hands. 6 months ago, those words would have sent him into a panic. He would have wanted to hide, to go back into the dark where it was safe. But as he looked at Taehyun, really looked at him, he saw the exhaustion, the weight of the crown, and the love that had become Taehyun's only anchor. I'm not a target, Taehyun, Jun said, his voice gaining a strength he hadn't known he possessed. I'm your partner. And it's time the world realized I'm not just waiting for you to protect me. Taehyun didn't smile. He just looked at Jun with an intensity that felt like a brand. I hope you're right, Jun. Because the West Coast doesn't play by the same rules as New York. They don't wait for a yes before they strike. Chapter 2. The air in the private study was thick with the scent of old paper and the sharp, medicinal tang of the scotch Taehyun hadn't touched. Across from them sat Elder Park, a man whose face was a roadmap of the Syndicate's violent history. He was the old guard, and he didn't believe in the new peace. The triads in Los Angeles are looking for a reason to say no, Park said, his voice like gravel grinding together. If you go there with him, with a man everyone knows is your heart, you're handing them a knife. They'll use him to squeeze you. Leave the boy here. Hide him in a safe house until the ink is dry. Taehyun's hand tightened around his glass until his knuckles went white. He is not a liability, Park. And I don't hide what's mine. He makes you soft, Park countered, leaning forward. You didn't use to hesitate. Now, you check your phone every 20 minutes. If you take him to the West Coast, you're walking into a trap with a blindfold on. Keep him out of sight or keep him out of the deal. Jun stood by the window, watching the rain streak the glass. He felt that familiar coldness creeping into his chest, the feeling of being discussed like a piece of luggage. It was exactly how Jae-won used to talk about him. But this time, the man defending him wasn't doing it to protect a trophy. He was doing it out of a terrifying, desperate love. Enough, Taehyun said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, low vibrato. Jun stays with me. No, Jun said. The word was small, but it stopped the room. Taehyun turned, his brow furrowed in confusion. Elder Park smirked, likely thinking Jun was finally showing the cowardice they expected from him. Park is right about one thing, Jun said, walking toward the table. He didn't look at the elder, he looked straight at Taehyun. If we go together, we are a single target. They expect you to be the shield and me to be the wound. Jun, I'm not leaving you behind, Taehyun said, his voice tight with an emerging panic. I'm not staying behind, Jun replied. He sat down at the table, his movements deliberate. You'll be in the shadows, Taehyun. You'll handle the security, the back end, the logistics. But I will be the one at the table. I will represent the Kang Syndicate. Taehyun actually stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood. Absolutely not. It's too dangerous. They are vipers, Jun. They'll try to tear you apart the moment you open your mouth. Let them try, Jun said. He reached out and grabbed Taehyun's sleeve, pulling him gently back down. They think I'm a porcelain doll. They think I'm just a pretty thing you picked up. That is our greatest advantage. While they're busy trying to figure out how to hurt you through me, I'll be memorizing their ledgers, their facial tics, and their weaknesses. Jun looked at Elder Park, who was actually looking impressed for the first time. Then he looked back at Taehyun. He saw the fear in Taehyun's eyes, not the fear of losing a deal, but the raw, human terror of a man who realized the person he loved was stepping into the line of fire. You've spent 6 months teaching me how to be safe, Jun whispered, loud enough only for Taehyun. Now, let me prove that I've learned how to be strong. I need to know I can stand without your shadow, Taehyun. Not because I want to leave you, but because I want to be worthy of staying. Taehyun's jaw was set so hard it looked like it might snap. He reached out, his fingers trembling slightly as he brushed them against Jun's cheek. He wasn't the underboss in this moment. He was just a man who didn't want to lose his world. If anything happens, Taehyun rasped, if even one of them looks at you wrong, I will burn that city to the ground. I know, Jun said, leaning into the touch. But they won't. Because they'll be too busy realizing that the most dangerous man in the room isn't the one with the gun. It's the one who remembers everything they've ever done wrong. Elder Park cleared his throat, sensing the shift in power. It's a bold play. Risky. But if the boy pulls it off, the triads won't just respect the Kangs. They'll fear them. Taehyun didn't look at Park. He just stared at Jun, his heart visible in his eyes. He was struggling with the hardest part of loving someone, letting them be brave. One week, Taehyun finally said, his voice thick. We leave for Los Angeles in the morning. But Jun, if you say the word, if you feel even a second of doubt, we pull the plug. Contract or no contract. I won't doubt, Jun said. That night, as they packed in silence, the air between them was heavy. Taehyun didn't try to talk him out of it again, but he stayed close, his hand constantly finding Jun's, at the small of his back, on his shoulder, interlacing their fingers. It was as if he was trying to memorize Jun's touch in case the world tried to take it away. Jun realized then that his choice wasn't just about the deal. It was about changing the dynamic of their lives. He was moving from a person who was protected to a person who partnered. And as he looked at the suitcase on the bed, he knew he was leaving more than just New York behind. He was leaving the last of the meek, Seo Jun in the drawer with the old gold watch. Chapter 3. The air in Los Angeles was different from New York. It was a dry, heavy heat that smelled like jasmine and exhaust fumes. The meeting with the triad representatives had gone better than anyone, especially Elder Park, had expected. Jun had sat at the head of the table in a glass-walled boardroom overlooking the Pacific, his memory a razor-sharp weapon. He had pointed out a ghost shell company in their offshore accounts before they'd even finished their first pot of tea. By the end of the afternoon, the Vipers weren't looking for a way to bite him, they were looking for a way to impress him. But the real test came that evening. Taehyun was in the hotel suite, 3 floors up, coordinating the final security sweeps. Jun had stepped out onto the hotel's private terrace to get a moment of air. He needed the silence to settle his racing heart. You always did look better in the moonlight, Johnny. The voice was like a ghost from a house that had burned down. Jun didn't jump. He didn't gasp. He just slowly turned around. Min Jae-won was standing by the stone railing. He looked different. The sharp, arrogant edge he'd carried in New York was jagged now. His suit was expensive, but it didn't hang right. He looked like a man who was trying very hard to pretend he still mattered. Jae-won, Jun said. His voice was flat. Not angry, just observant. The West Coast is a long way from home for a man with no shipping routes. Jae-won laughed, but the sound was thin. He took a step forward, his hands in his pockets. I have friends here. People who remember who I am. People who don't think I'm trash, just because a Kang took an interest in me. Jun watched him. With his photographic memory, he could see the layers of the man. The way he was sweating despite the cool breeze. The way his eyes kept darting toward the door, checking for Taehyun. What do you want, Jae-won? I saw the news. The new face of the Kangs, Jae-won sneered, but then his expression softened into something practiced, something meant to look like regret. Is this really what you want, Jun? This life? You're a target now. You're sitting in rooms with killers, playing a game you aren't built for. He stepped closer, trying to lower his voice to that intimate, manipulative whisper Jun used to mistake for love. Remember how it was? In that little apartment? Just us. It was quiet. You were safe because nobody even knew you existed. You didn't have to be brave. You could just be mine. I could take you back. Could hide you. We could go back to the way it was before the Kangs ruined everything. Jun looked at him. He remembered the apartment. He remembered the safety of being invisible, which was really just the safety of being ignored. He remembered the cold dinners and the way he used to shrink himself down so he wouldn't take up too much space in Jae-won's life. You're right, Jun said softly. Jae-won's eyes lit up. He reached out a hand, his fingers twitching as if to touch Jun's hair. I knew it. I knew you were still in there. I was safe because I was small, Jun continued, his voice as calm as a deep lake. I was invisible because you didn't think I was worth looking at unless I was serving you. You didn't love me, Jae-won. You loved the version of me that didn't know he deserved better. Jae-won's hand froze in midair. The mask of nostalgia cracked, revealing the ugly, fragile ego underneath. You think this is better? Being a pet for a monster like Taehyun? He'll get bored, Jun. And when he does, you won't just be discarded. You'll be dead. Taehyun doesn't want me to be small, Jun said. He stepped forward, forcing Jae-won to step back. He's terrified of me being in these rooms, but he lets me stand there anyway. Because he respects me more than he fears losing me. Jun looked at Jae-won's expensive, poorly fitted suit. He looked at the desperation in the man's eyes. He realized then that he didn't hate Jae-won. Hate required a connection. Hate was a heavy thing you had to carry. I don't want revenge, Jae-won, Jun said. I don't want to see you suffer. I just want you to understand that you are no longer a part of my memory that hurts. You're just a detail I don't need anymore. Jae-won opened his mouth to shout, to curse, to throw one last insult. But he looked at Jun's face, the absolute, devastating peace there, and the words died in his throat. He realized that no matter what he said, he couldn't make Jun flinch. He couldn't make him cry. He couldn't even make him angry. He was irrelevant. Without another word, Jae-won turned and walked away. He stumbled once, his shoulder hitting the doorframe, before disappearing into the shadows of the hotel. Jun stood on the terrace for a long time after he left. He waited for the wave of triumph to hit him, or the surge of adrenaline. But it was just quiet. The glass door behind him slid open. Taehyun stepped out, his eyes scanning the terrace instantly. He saw Jun, saw his stillness, and his hand went to the inside of his jacket. Jun? What happened? My guys said someone was out here. Jun turned and looked at him. The man he loved. The man who was currently breathing hard because he'd run down 3 flights of stairs the moment he thought Jun might be in trouble. Nothing happened, Jun said. He walked over and wrapped his arms around Taehyun's waist, burying his face in the warmth of his chest. Just a shadow. But the sun came out and it's gone now. Taehyun held him tight, his chin resting on Jun's head. The deal is done, Jun. They signed. Every single one of them. I know, Jun whispered. I remembered the exact pen they used. He felt Taehyun's heart beating against his ear. It was the only rhythm that mattered. The past had tried to pull him back into the dark, and for the first time, Jun hadn't even had to fight. He had just walked into the light. Chapter 4. The flight back to New York was quiet. Taehyun spent most of it watching Jun sleep, his hand never leaving Jun's. It was as if he was still waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the danger of the West Coast to follow them home. But the brownstone was exactly as they had left it. The air was cool and still, smelling of the beeswax polish the staff used on the oak floors. A few nights after their return, Jun found himself in Taehyun's study. He was looking for a specific ledger, but his hand brushed against a heavy, manila folder tucked into the back of a drawer. He didn't need to see the label to know what it was. His photographic memory flashed the image of the dining table from months ago, the black ink, and the handwritten line at the bottom. Nothing happens without a yes. Jun pulled the folder out and sat on the floor, leaning against the mahogany desk. He flipped through the pages. The rules of engagement. The allowance. The security protocols. At the time, this document had been his oxygen. It was the only thing that made him feel like he wasn't just being kidnapped by a different set of villains. It was a shield. But as he read the words now, they felt small. They felt like a cage that had been painted to look like a garden. The door to the study creaked open. Taehyun stood there, his tie undone, his shirt sleeves rolled up. He saw the folder in Jun's lap and his entire body went rigid. The air in the room changed instantly, growing heavy with a sudden, sharp tension. I was going to move that to the safe, Taehyun said, his voice unusually tight. You don't need to look at it anymore. Jun looked up at him. But, are you afraid I'll find a loophole? Taehyun didn't smile. He walked into the room, his eyes fixed on the papers. I'm afraid you'll realize that the contract is the only thing keeping you here. I gave you the money, the connections, and the strength to leave, Jun. I spent 6 months making sure you didn't need me. Thomas, I wonder if I did too good a job. It was the most honest thing Taehyun had ever said, The great underboss wasn't afraid of the triads or the mints. He was afraid of a piece of paper. Jun stood up, the folder held loosely in his hand. He walked over to the fireplace, where a small fire was crackling against the evening chill. "You're right," Jun said. "This contract is the only reason I'm your fiancé." Taehyun flinched. He actually stepped back, his face paling. He looked like he'd been struck. "Jun, I don't want to be your fiancé on paper anymore," Jun said, his voice clear and unwavering. Taehyun's hands balled into fists at his sides. He looked like he was bracing for an execution. "I understand. If that's what you want. I'll have the car ready. I'll make sure your accounts are—" "Taehyun, listen to me," Jun interrupted. He stepped into Taehyun's space, forcing the man to look at him. "I don't want to be your fiancé on paper because I don't want to be here because of a rule. I want to be your partner because I wake up every single morning and I choose you. I choose the way you drink your coffee. I choose the way you protect me. I choose the way you ask for permission even when you don't have to." Jun held the folder out toward the flames. "I don't need a contract to feel safe with you," Jun whispered. "I just need you." He let the folder go. It hit the logs and stayed there for a second before the heat curled the edges of the paper. The rules of engagement turned black. The security protocols vanished into orange sparks. The handwritten line, "Nothing happens without a yes," was the last thing to go, the ink glowing for a heartbeat before disappearing into ash. Taehyun watched the fire, his chest heaving as if he'd just run a marathon. He looked at the empty space in Jun's hands, then at Jun's face. The silence wasn't scary. It was the sound of a debt being erased and a life beginning. Taehyun reached out, his hands framing Jun's face. He was trembling. This man, who had ordered deaths and moved millions with a nod, was shaking because of a boy who remembered too much. "You're sure?" Taehyun rasped. "There's no safety net now, Jun. No rules. Just us." "Good," Jun said. He reached up, covering Taehyun's hands with his own. "I've spent my whole life being claimed by people, Taehyun. By my father's debts, by Jae-won's ego, by your syndicate's needs. For once, I just want to be chosen." Taehyun didn't wait for a yes this time. He didn't have to. He pulled Jun into a kiss that tasted like the end of a long, cold winter. It was desperate and sweet and terrifyingly real. As they stood in the glow of the dying fire, Jun realized that the contract hadn't been a shield at all. It had been a training bra for his heart. He didn't need the paper to tell him he was safe. He was safe because the most dangerous man in the city was currently holding him like he was made of glass and gold. The contract was gone. The obligation was dead. And for the first time, Seo Jun felt truly, wonderfully free. The city hummed in the distance, a dull glow on the horizon that no longer felt like a threat. Here, upstate, the air tasted like pine needles and the coming winter. There were no sirens, no screeching tires, and no shadows waiting in the corners of gala ballrooms. Chapter 5. The new house wasn't a fortress. It was a sprawling, single-story craftsman with wide porches and windows that let in every scrap of the afternoon sun. It was the kind of place where you could leave the doors unlocked, though old habits died hard and the security system was the best money could buy, invisible, but there. Seo Jun sat in his library. It was his favorite room, lined with shelves that he had organized not by color or size, but by the way the stories made him feel. On the large oak desk sat a stack of papers, not syndicate ledgers, but lesson plans. Twice a week, Jun took the train into the city to teach at a community center. He taught memory techniques and basic accounting to young people who had slipped through the cracks, kids who, like him, had been told they were nothing until someone else decided to use them. He showed them how to turn their minds into a vault, how to spot a lie in a contract, and how to never let someone else hold the pen to their lives. He was no longer a shadow. He was a teacher. A soft sound at the door made him look up. Taehyun stood there, leaning against the frame. He wasn't wearing a suit. He was in a thick, charcoal sweater and jeans, his hair a little messy from the wind. He had a streak of dirt on his cheek from the garden he pretended was just for property value, though Jun had seen him meticulously pruning the rosebushes for 3 hours that morning. "The light is fading," Taehyun said, his voice a warm low rumble that still made Jun's heart do a slow, happy roll. "You've been staring at those papers for too long." Jun smiled, leaning back. "I'm almost done. These kids, they're so bright, Taehyun. They just need someone to look at them and see it." Taehyun walked over, standing behind Jun's chair. He didn't hesitate. He placed his large, warm hands on Jun's shoulders, his thumbs tracing the line of Jun's collarbone. It was a touch that spoke of years of built-up trust, a touch that no longer needed a yes, because the yes was woven into the very fabric of their lives. "You see them," Taehyun whispered, leaning down to press a kiss to the crown of Jun's head. "Just like you saw me." "I saw a man who liked a blue mug," Jun teased, reaching back to squeeze Taehyun's hand. "And I saw a man who was too brave for his own good," Taehyun countered. He pulled Jun up from the chair, drawing him into a slow, easy embrace. There was no urgency, no fear of a looming deadline or a rival syndicate. There was just the weight of each other. They walked into the kitchen together. The room was bright, filled with the smell of roasting vegetables and the simple, domestic sounds of a home being lived in. Taehyun moved to the cupboard, the one where the blue mug lived, and started setting the table. Jun watched him. His photographic memory, once a source of so much pain, now served as a beautiful, endless gallery. He remembered the exact way Taehyun had looked at him that first night in the SUV. He remembered the smell of the rain in Los Angeles. He remembered the orange sparks of the burning contract. But mostly he focused on the now. Taehyun placed 2 plates on the wooden table. He didn't call for a servant. He didn't check his phone. He just pulled out Jun's chair and waited. Once, not so long ago, Seo Jun had stood in the freezing cold on a New York City curb, clutching a gold watch and waiting for the world to discard him. He had been a debt to be paid, a bridge to be crossed, a thing to be owned. Now, he stood in the doorway of his own home, watching the most powerful man he had ever known set the table for 2. Taehyun looked up, catching Jun's gaze. He reached out a hand, an invitation that was always there, as constant as the sunrise. "The food is getting cold, Jun." Jun walked forward and took his hand. He sat down, the warmth of the house wrapping around him like a blanket. They ate in silence, not the heavy, suffocating silence of the syndicate, but the quiet, comfortable silence of 2 people who knew everything there was to know about each other and loved it all anyway. Taehyun didn't set the table because he owned the man across from him. He didn't do it because of a contract or a debt. He did it because, after a lifetime of ruling through fear, he had finally found the one person he never wanted to eat alone with again. And as Jun looked at his partner in the soft evening light, he realized that a happy ending wasn't a destination. It was a choice you made every single day, over a simple bowl of stew and a quiet conversation, in a house where nobody ever had to be afraid of the dark again. And that concludes the journey of Jun and Taehyun. From a public betrayal at a gala to a quiet home built on real, chosen love, their story is a reminder that you are never trash, and you are always worth the effort of someone who truly sees you. Did you love seeing Jun take charge in the sequel? Or was your favorite moment the burning of the contract? Drop a comment below and let me know what other BL tropes you'd like to see us tackle next. Enemies to lovers? Forced proximity? Give me your best ideas. If you want more stories that prioritize emotional depth and heart-stopping tension, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the BL Story Room. Hit that notification bell so you're the first to know when our next story drops. Thank you for listening, thank you for being part of this journey, and remember, your story is yours to write. See you in the next one.